Hello, everyone, and welcome to the You're Better Off Knowing podcast. This episode is about an evergreen in marketing and marketing science, the value of attribution in comparison to incrementality measurement. And I have a great round of guests with me to discuss this subject. First of all, we have Nico Neumann. He is a professor at the Melbourne Business School and founder of marketingscience.today. And he connects academics and practice, also calls himself a pracademic. And on the pure practice side, we have a guest from one of the most advanced performance advertisers. Thomas Violino is product manager at Zalando and leading Zalando's measurement product development. And to reflect Meta's view and opportunities, we have Gufeng Zhou, marketing science partner at Meta, based in London. So very happy to have all of you. Could you maybe all start with providing a quick summary on who you are? And maybe let's start with Nico.
Yeah, hi everyone. Hi Thorsten, Gufeng, Thomas, and of course all the listeners. I'm Nico. As you nicely mentioned, I see myself as a pracademic. So my full-time job is teaching postgraduate students about the world of marketing analytics and course analytics and marketing communications. And of course, I also do a lot of research and help companies advise in the same area. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much. I'm really happy to have you. Thomas, do you want to go next?
Yes, thank you. Hey, everyone. So on my side, I'm Thomas. I work for Zalando, which is a big e-commerce fashion company in Europe. And at Zalando for the last 5 years, I'm responsible for developing measurements and steering products with our team. And we are using our product to make investment decision for the performance marketing of Zalando.
Excited to learn more about that. And Gufeng, what about you?
Hi, nice to see you guys again. This is Gufeng. I am at Marketing Science at Meta since 6 years. And I'm specialized in modeling, specifically MMM, marketing mix modeling. I'm the creator of Robin, the open source package. So really happy to talk about measurement today with the round of guests here.
Great. Looking forward to this. Let's start with the subject. And let's start with Nico. Those who follow you on LinkedIn know that you can be very vocal actually against attribution models. So one of your recent posts that was actually a cartoon with the words, "Ooh, I stepped in shit," while showing a writing last click attribution underneath somebody's shoe. So why are you so heavily opposed to attribution?
Yeah, that's a good question. It was obviously an interesting little meme to which got a bit of traction, more than I thought, actually, right, to start a conversation. But I mean, we have to obviously, I think, distinguish between the concept of attribution, right, just the idea of where do I put my marketing dollars versus the digital attribution tools that have been now used for 10 years. And actually, I came through attribution into media, to be honest. So, but I think it has changed quite a bit. So, of course, this specific meme was referring to last touch attribution, right? The idea that you give all credit to last touch or last click. And I think that's particularly dangerous. But also because of different developments, I think that many of us know, like more fragmentation of data, less cookie tracking, etc., privacy trends, more privacy protection. It is more and more difficult to actually have a complete picture about the customer journey. And I think, these are the reasons to be very careful, right? I believe, by the way, there is a short window where even last touch attribution can be helpful. But this is very short. And my general comment is because also, multi-touch attribution has become less helpful, I think. My worry is that the idea of attribution overall creates more damage once people get used to it versus other method that we can use.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. Thomas, at Zalando, you are using attribution, but you also take the results with a pinch of salt, I would say, or not for granted. What do you say? What is your reply to Nico's arguments? How exactly are you dealing with attribution results, and what do you base your budget decisions actually on?
Yes. So to give the context, at Zalando, we are making real-time investment decision based on the outcome of the attribution that we have. We use an attribution model, which is rolling every day, that estimates on continuous basis what's the impact of our marketing investment, right? And we use this outcome to make a big shift in investment decision up to the daily level.
Okay.
Of course, we know the risk of using this attribution model, and it was a big journey until we get the necessary trust to make this investment decision. And we use calibration of the attribution through incrementality testing that we conduct in-house via geo experiments to help us to add some causality to this attribution model, right? The number coming from the attribution are never used for granted as they are without any correction. They are always attached to some sort of trust level that we have in the numbers based on whether or not we calibrate the attribution correctly to some extent, if I may say. But yeah, it was a journey before trusting this attribution. A lot of years passed, a lot of tests were run, a lot of calibration were done until we reach a point where we believe we can use this calibrated attribution model to make investment decisions.
Yeah, very, very interesting and sounds good. So, Gufeng, Thomas has mentioned incrementality now, and obviously incrementality is also one of the core principles of measurement here at Meta. So maybe you can explain a little bit how we utilize incrementality?
Yes, sure. Thanks, Torsten. And I think it's very smart and practical of Zalando to keep the speed of attribution while correcting the effect size with the causal experiment. Of course, I agree with Nico that large-scale attribution is fundamentally flawed, but I do think that Zalando's approach actually has the best of both worlds. Now, a little bit more about incrementality at Meta. It is the absolute centerpiece of meta measurement narrative, and the tool is called Meta Conversion Lift. It works by randomizing millions of devices and or cluster of devices, which is one of the most powerful experimental setup due to this huge sample size. When the conversion lift study begins, the user will be randomly divided into test group and control group. The principle is quite simple. The test group will see the campaign, while the control group will not see the campaign. In this case, you might ask the question, if the control group doesn't see the campaign, so then how do you know who is comparable to the test group? And the technique behind is called opportunity logging. So this is done by letting the control group audiences still enter the ads auction, and then they still potentially would win the option, but they won't see the ads, so the ads won't be shown to them. And by logging the control group winners, so to say, we can ensure that we know who are comparable between test and control group. And this is the way how we ensure that the lift studies, meta conversion lift studies, will deliver the causal effect.
I really like hearing this, of course, as an academic, to highlight that RCT or randomized control experimental trials are the gold standard. But also, I have to say here, I mean, if Thomas, if your team and your colleagues use actually some kind of geo-test or experiments to calibrate, that's already a more advanced approach, right? I think we hear a lot about marketing mix models trying to calibrate those. But there's, at least what I've seen so far, there's less chat about attribution models. So I'm actually curious, if you don't mind me asking, have you seen, when you started doing this and started basically using comparisons and calibration with lift test, have you seen like changes in, I don't know how much you can share, but has this like really increased your actually confidence in this? Or yeah, I was just really interested to hear about this.
That's a good question. Actually, yes, we saw a lot of things, a lot of noise, a lot of weird things, a lot of pivotal moment where everything changed in the number we were looking at. And as I was mentioning, like, you need a lot of testing and experiment to understand what's happening, because the result can point toward different direction, and calibrating this attribution model takes time. It's not by running one or two experiments only, but you will have some sort of confidence in the truth, because the result will point toward different direction. There is noise everywhere here. And I think to answer your question, there is one thing that I like to say, and I like to view in this direction compared to some other advertisers. A lot of people see the attribution as the starting point of their marketing measurement, right? And they have their attribution, and they take this number, and they try to calibrate a bit the attribution. On our side, we have the different perspective. We see the starting point as the incrementality test. We run incrementality test. That's the only moment where we are an estimation on what's the impact of marketing. And we use the attribution to extrapolate the result of these tests during period where we can't run tests. And I like to see it this way compared to the other way around, because it puts all the focus on having strong incrementality testing methodologies, where you can understand what's the real impact of marketing, and use the attribution to just correlate what you can observe, right?
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
Thomas, can you actually tell how often do you calibrate, or how often do you change the calibration factors?
I will give you ballpark number, but so bear in mind that we have a lot of markets where we are involved at Zalando. We also invest in a lot of different marketing channels. But I would say we try to collect between 10 and 15 geo experiments data points per quarter to calibrate this attribution model.
Wow.
Oh, that's a lot.
Yes, that's quite a lot. Plus, we add some CLS, for example, for Meta. But yeah, we have many data points, and we need as much to get the confidence that we have in.
Great. Thank you. What do the others think? How often should you calibrate? Nico, Gufeng, maybe any opinions on that?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think Gufeng probably more there here can probably better answer this.
Well, like theoretically, right, in the perfect world, if that would be possible, a continuous experiment would be the perfect thing, right? I mean, then that means,
I agree with that.
Right, as often as possible, right? That means actually that, but that is just not the reality. So I think that still the principle is still as often as possible, wherever possible. Maybe an interesting story to add to here. I've specialized a lot in MMM, and I've been asked this question, like, if you only have so there are some channels who are more testable than other channels, right? Digital channels are generally way more testable than other channels, right? So is it fair to only calibrate this channel or that channel and then leave out the rest, right? So I got this question like actually quite often, and then it's not easy to answer. But then I think at least currently my opinion is this. Imagine you will have two channels, right? Nothing else, right? Let's say 100 conversions. Let's say the truth is 40-60, right? This is the truth. We somehow know the truth, right? And then the attribution will tell you, or whatever other methodologies tells you, oh, it's 20-80. So you have no way that you can know that the truth is 40-60 because it's hidden, right? It's all about that. But then you have the opportunity to do a live test, an experiment on channel 1, right? And then it tells you it's 39 or something, right? Very close to the truth that is 40. Well, then that means the rest will be also very close to the truth. It's a zero-sum game in a sense, right? If we believe that there is a truth, right, about the total incrementality, then the certainty in part will also contribute the certainty of total. So this is how I see it. So to basically as an argument for, well, wherever you can and whenever you can, you should calibrate this. But this is, just my opinion. I wonder how do you guys think?
I wish we live in the perfect world with only 2 channels. It would be much easier. Yeah, Nico, maybe you have something to say here.
No, I mean, yeah, I agree. I think you should experiment as much as possible, and then, of course, it depends very much in which part of the world you live, right? If you're in the US or in a big country like India, you have very different opportunities to run experiments versus, for example, where I'm based in Australia, right? Or imagine you're in New Zealand. It's even smaller. Sometimes we talk to people there, and it's very hard. You can run 1 or 2 experiments, right? But yeah, it's. I mean, this is still, I think, the best way to go. And then you can use something like attribution. You can obviously try to bring your attribution model to something that's more towards a causal estimate. There was just one point I also wanted to pick up. It's interesting always that the real-time insights often come up, right? And if you think about marketing mix modeling as the other big tool that we use as a complementary method. And I have to say, I'm still a bit skeptic in terms of attribution being the ideal partner to give you more recent insights. I believe that marketing mix modeling, or maybe we should almost call it in this context and really media mix model, can also be used at more granular levels. So, for example, with hourly data, you get updates, more recent updates because you have many more data points. And it has a lot of other advantages, and you can also analyze more data. So it may not be exactly the same granularity as attribution can give you, but I feel that's one field, for example, that is still, one application that has not been used as much as I think it should be. Because just for me, if you think about as you mentioned, there's no perfect world. We have to make whatever we have work, right? And just if I think about attribution, the concept, allocating dollars in which media channels work as a causal problem, one of the biggest concerns for me is always having missing data, right? So if you're an econometric person, you would know this term omitted variable bias, but it's just think about a puzzle you try to solve and some key pieces are just missing. So that is always, I think, one of the biggest problems. And that's why I like marketing mix modeling, because you can add so many variables in there, right? Versus digital attribution that's really limited just to the digital part. So no method is perfect, not even experiments, right? Everything can go wrong. But that's why I personally have often promoted marketing mix models at different levels over,
Yeah.
let's say, attribution.
I understand.
I mean, my answer to that would be they all have their own purpose and sense. But maybe Thomas, hearing from an advertiser and big big marketing player actually. So how do you use those 3 actually?
Exactly. I think you pointed out something very real. Like they all have flaws, right? Using something like a probabilistic model or attribution, which is more down to earth. The problem with attribution, as you said, is like the missing data. The good thing when you calibrate is that it's a nice property, but you're also correct for the data that you are missing, more or less. But in a way, there is a lot of unknown. I would say the thing with attribution, and when it's used for advertisement, which is very close to the conversion, is that it is very down to earth and people can really relate on what's happening compared to a probabilistic model where you have to trust the modeling, right? Here you can clearly see, okay, there is less click, so okay, people click less on the ad, maybe it means that the incrementality is different. It's really important for business and for business stakeholders to have this view, right? Because they can trust what you are telling them to a certain extent. And I think it helps to have confidence. Now, with MMM, for example, it also help, and I'm talking about the upgraded version of MMM that exists now, not the MMM from 10 years ago. It seems that now you can fit a lot of data into it to try to predict some estimation about the impact of marketing of unknown part that the attribution can't do. For example, media channels, TV or radio or anything which is not click driven. And here I think MMM is necessary. I mean, that's the only thing that exists. Again, I think it needs to be calibrated with incrementality testing. It needs to be the key. And if you want for Zalando to have a full picture for marketing, we are trying to triangulate everything. So we have an MMM, we have an attribution, we have incrementality tests, and we try with all this information to make the right investment decisions.
I think that's a fair point. The calibration, like you said, even marketing mix models, even if you share my view that I think they have advantages over attribution, you also can improve them strongly by again calibrating them with experiments or anything that's above the pyramid, right? I think you can sort the different methods. I feel like sometimes there's still a bit of misunderstandings about the power of randomized experiments, right? Because they have all the hard work actually in the design of the experiment, right? They're like really big books just about how you design a proper experiment, and once they're run and designed, if they are designed well, and of course sometimes things go wrong, but generally speaking, if you're patient and wait, right, no peeking, not p-hacking, right, if you wait the right amount of time, anyone can just compare the two numbers, right? And that's the beauty of it. But anyway, I think they're always at the top. I feel like the nice thing is they have very few assumptions, and then you have the methods like what we call quasi experiments, because they try to mimic an experiment, right? Even with their work with non-experimental data. And then I think you have something like more 100% observational method like marketing mix modeling and attribution that are flawed but very pragmatic in that they can be applied all the time. And if you use any method above them to calibrate them, right, even quasi experiments like geotest, they should improve. Yeah, so it's great to hear this.
Yeah,
this is actually super interesting. Like, I want to just add like a thing. Because calibration seems to be the theme here, right? Basically just use the strength of every methodologies and blend them together. And then there's a clear hierarchy, right? Like, of course, there's strengths and weaknesses, but in the hierarchy of causality, experiments is at top, and everybody agree with it. Guys, you probably know, or maybe you don't know yet, right? There's this Meta, let's say new product that's called incremental attribution, right? That lives in Ads Manager, right? So basically, it's available to all the advertisers. Then you can look at this number. So now you can compare, let's say, the standard attributed Ads Manager conversions, purchases, for example, right, to the so-called incremental conversions, right? That is produced by the model, incremental attribution model. And how it works is basically, right, they use the simple, I would say simple in quote, air quotes, Ads Manager attributed purchases to regress or to predict the incremental numbers. And because Meta, of course, has a lot of powerful experiments in the data bank, right? So that makes it possible to build these models to basically use attributed numbers to predict incremental numbers, right? And that the result of that is the predicted incremental purchase. And in this case, I mean, of course, right, for Zalando is not super relevant because you just run true experiments. Like, why use the predicted experiment, right? But think about other advertisers, millions of others who cannot run these experiments. What I would see is that this would be probably their best guess, the next best option, instead of relying on any rule-based or even statistical attribution models that are just not having any causality in it, right? So I would see that as the next best thing. Of course, it's only for Meta in this example, right? I don't know if other platforms are also producing something similar, but at least, right, this one number is as best as could get for people who cannot run experiments. What do you guys think?
Sounds interesting. Sorry, Thomas. I was just curious, by the way, because we have asked you, Gufeng, can you actually share, has there been any tests internally? Have you had a chance? I don't know. I know the product is new, but have people compared the predictions with like real holdouts? And or I don't know. Is there anything you can share that's
Well, it's the
in
product
public,
is
basically?
the product is like generally accessible to all the advertisers. It is something that it's available in Ads Manager for all the advertisers on Meta, right? So it's basically just it's very simple. It's another column, right? You have campaign A, you have the normal attributed conversions, and then you have this incremental conversions that is has an extra metric, so you can actually compare those two, right? And see the difference.
We'll stop advertising for Meta in a minute. But I think the point about incremental attribution is also that it allows to optimize not just for conversions, but for conversions that are incremental based on what the AI learned from many experiments. And we saw an improvement there for advertisers. So initial tests showed like 46% improvement in performance, actually, because it's looking for incremental conversions, and then we can measure that and validate it. So it works. But yeah, I think that the point was also for advertisers that are not able to run MMMs and attribution and geotests and lift tests and everything. It could be a good point to start. It's maybe also talking about smaller advertisers and looking at Nico or Gufeng. Apart from that new product, what would your recommendation be to what should they start with to measure their advertising impact?
Nico, please.
Smaller advertisers, yeah, I think it doesn't matter which size you have. I don't think you have an excuse to not experiment. Actually, I believe if you're a smaller advertiser, right? We made this joke earlier about having one or two channels, right? Which someone big like Zalando does not have. But if you have only a few channels, I believe then you should experiment, right? Because you don't need a complex model that compares 10 different things. So I think then it's really, it's quite interesting that it's typically, I think, a lot of the big guys who talk about experimentation, while I believe, yeah, the smaller companies, although I've had some really good experience, I think when there are these e-commerce startups, I mean, we also, let's be honest, we all know there's a lot of bad stuff happening, sadly. Not every actor, sells the right stuff, right? And I believe that some of the smaller ones, they can't afford to bullshit themselves, right? Because if you're a startup, you have to grow. They really have this growth hacking mindset, and they want to know what is the right number. So they are often also very interested in running experiments. I have experience, right? But I believe there are too many small companies who still think last touch attribution is okay for them because they have just one or two channels. And that brings me back to the opening, like, please be careful here, right? Like, you should experiment as well, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely agree with this. Like, of course, it's not black and white, but just the general principle, right? That because attribution, especially last click, has existed so long, has become such a standard, and people just using it without questioning it, right? If you're just new into, have your startup, the first time looking into analytics, right? Web analytics or and any app analytics, right? You won't probably even question that number. So, oh, these are it's still, for many cases, the standard. I think advocating for more critical thinking around what kind of number are these, and do we have alternative or better methodologies? This is very healthy thinking. So I totally agree with that.
And I think sometimes advertisers don't even know they have less touch in their attribution or in their optimization model, because then they say, no, we optimize by CPA, right? Cost per acquisition. And then, okay, but how do you calculate the acquisition, right? It's probably a hidden last touch attribution somewhere. So that is, I think, something to take away if some of you out there listen there. If you have a CPA model, just check how you actually calculate the acquisition that's allocated to the cost, as one thing.
Question it. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. One more thing. We talked also a lot over the course of this podcast so far about causality and incremental experiments measuring causality. How would you actually define causality? It's a very often used term, but how do you actually define it?
I think there are a lot of like academic definitions, but I think the key idea is that you really know one factor has driven another one, right? So in a nutshell, I think there shouldn't be an alternative explanation. There shouldn't be
Yeah.
something else that can actually be the reason that it happened, right? And I think that is really the core idea. I know in a marketing sense, I know I spend $1 more and I know this will create X amount additional conversions. And there's a lot of confusion that predicting you just need consistent patterns, right? I need to know that every morning, let's say the rooster crows in the morning, I know when the rooster crows, okay, the sun will go up, right? It's very consistent, but I know the rooster doesn't cause the sun to go up, right? If the rooster disappears one day, the sun will still go up. This is, by the way, not my example. It's from Julia Pearl, the Book of Why, but I really like it. Like a very big professor and well-known figure in the world of causality. But yeah, I think this is very important, right? We really want to know that there's no other reason. Because I think I sometimes say people predicting is actually fairly easy. You know, I mean, I can measure it. I can have a number. I can compare it. It's much harder to know your causal estimate is right or wrong, because you have to then really use an experiment as a ground truth, right? There's no other good way to otherwise do this. And
Perfect.
Yeah, Thomas.
I think the same. I think when people use a blank attribution, last click attribution, they focus too much on the correlation. And I think it's matched perfectly the rooster and the sun thing. It's not because someone click on an ad that he will not have buy without the ad, right? Maybe this person would have buy anyway, and the ad doesn't have any causality link into the conversions. So yeah, also think the same here.
Great. By the way, I've heard that some roosters think they are actually the cause for the sun to go up, but I'm not sure if that's true.
Now I kind of remember, like, maybe one small thing to throw into this, a causality round is that we've seen a lot of discussion. It's not really recently, but last years, right? So there's this distinction also between causality and causal inference, right? And I've also learned this, through other researchers, that causality is the real thing, right? Das Ding an sich, right? The thing behind, right? That's the truth, right? While causal inference is the attempt to infer the causality, right? So the models, the methodologies that attempts to do that. So there's a very subtle difference here. And then, especially in the modeling, right? There's a lot of different techniques that are clustered into the well-known causal inference, right? With experiments being the holy grail of it, but there's also like a ladder of causality, so to say, right? And then below that, there's a lot of differences. I think you see oftentimes as some, let's say, vendors, right, or some vendors are overselling their models and label them as a causal model, whereas they actually really are doing a causal inference, an attempt to be causal. But right, Nico, you talked about the omitted variable bias. So right, there's this. So I see a certain maybe misleading information here sometimes, right? That these vendors or maybe others, right, are putting out to say this is a causal model that implies, well, it produces causality, whereas it's actually just part of causal inference. And so I think there's a certain fuzzy area here. I don't know if this is something you guys. What do you guys think about?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, there's a lot of noise out there. I mean, causality, causal inference, incrementality have all become buzzwords. So marketers want this, and then whenever something comes to buzzword, people jumping on the bandwagon. And I mean, I'm also for me, as a, I guess, pre-academic, still academic in there. Incrementality is really just a term for like what you get in a counterfactual analysis and not in an MMM, right? How I would say this. There are marginal effects. You try to estimate the difference, what happens, but it's not a true incremental like analysis like in an experiment, right? So yeah, it is interesting that I think everyone needs to do their checks and ask the hard questions. And you have a lot of vendors these days, right? I mean, this is one of the reasons you mentioned at the beginning. I founded Marketing Science Today to help marketers find and compare different providers, right? And there's only so much you can do, because this has happened for me always as an academic, and sometimes you wear the hat of a consultant and people ask you, who should I pick? What should I look out for, right? And some things you can standardize, but then you have to always ask the hard questions in the end. I think there is a lot to learn, because it's complex. Causality is complex, and people need to learn to ask the right questions.
Absolutely. Thank you, Thorsten.
Great. Yeah, and Nico, you mentioned Marketing Science Today, so that's your website, right, where you give advice, just to be clear to everyone here.
Sorry, let's be careful. Yes, I have created this to help marketers, but this is not the platform to promote myself, right? It's more to have marketers help each other, and of course publishers as well. I think there's a trend towards having more like SaaS platforms, and I think as we see more bundled solution, without naming names, but like a GeoLift company doing MMM. And a lot of vendors, I think, who have initially only offered marketing mix modeling, have started offering geotest solutions as well. I think the next one will be merged and attribution as well, some vendors, right? I think we may see even A/B testing platforms be merged in. Although there is, to be fair, there is actually an advantage having this within the publisher, like, for example, like Meta has. So I know some people always say, "Oh, we don't want to trust the publisher because they grade their own homework," which is, I think, a fair concern. But there are also a lot of advantages of having it in the platform, because only you can, especially if you have an identifier, right, you can ensure that someone is really in the treatment group and sees ads versus someone else not. If you use cookies or emails outside of a platform, it's much harder, right? But anyway, I mean, so yes, there are pros and cons for everything, and but I see this, I think, like a lot of interesting suites where marketers have it easier and more choice to work with.
Cool. Yeah, fascinating. All right. Thank you, everyone. It's time to wrap up. So maybe we do a short round and everyone says what he thinks the audience should take away and remember from this podcast. Maybe Thomas, we start with you.
First of all, thanks everyone. I think that was a really insightful and great experience to be here, to be honest. And I think if I have to give advice to the person that are listening to this podcast, it would be in line with what we discussed: incrementality testing, experiment first, challenge every information that you get. Try to test as most as possible to make a decision on your marketing, and try to get as many estimates as possible. You don't have, as it was also pointed out, you don't need to have like a full setup of in-house attribution or in-house geo experiment. You can start with publishers' tools and start from here and gather more insights, challenge a bit the insight that you get. And yeah, that would be my advice.
Great. Thank you. Nico, what about you?
This was really interesting to hear also the insights from some big advertiser like Zalando. Thanks, Thomas. And look, I welcome this huge interest now in marketing measurement. But I guess this is still the academic in me. I understand that many marketers want analytics as a tool for a political message, right? Just to get support and show how important marketing is. And we all know it is important. I think there should be no question about this, but obviously you have to fight with the CFO. But I sometimes think marketers forget too much that it's not only about the message, but that you can actually help your company grow if you apply like the things we try to share and increase awareness about, right? So and this is, by the way, also, of course, again, I come back to this. It's dangerous when you start with last touch attribution, think something has an 80% lift, right? And then you do an actual test and it's like 10%. So sometimes it's about being modest. You can really grow a company, but in reality, it's probably just a few percent and you should be happy. So yes, more science, you will grow, and but it's probably more modest. That's likely reality.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Gufeng?
You guys actually had said everything, so not much more for me left to summarize. Then I would just mention that it sounds a little bit salesy, but I do think that incremental attribution, incremental conversion is a great tool, especially for those who cannot, or at least cannot often run an experiment. Try that out. That's the best best thing that you can get. And that gets you a step closer to causality. And then, of course, the incremental optimization, that is then, right, the next step then.
That should always be the goal, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Thomas, Nico, Gufeng, for sharing all your wisdom and advice. I believe it was really relevant for our audience. So also thanks to the audience for tuning in and listening. If you found it helpful, if you found it relevant, please subscribe, share, and stay tuned for the next episodes. And until then, bye-bye.